So a while ago I was given a machine for free. It was donated to me and the machine didn't work. It was an old machine, and what I did is I usually strip them down, take parts that are useful, cabling and things like that. And what I found when this machine came, that even though it was filthy dirty and it didn't run, the motherboard and processor was actually still good. Now I didn't want to waste this and recycle it like I do with the other parts, because it's quite a useful piece. So what I've decided to do is do a new build, something that will be a bit of a tribute to AMD because it's an AMD processor, and here it is. So this is the motherboard that I managed to salvage out of that machine with the processor still in it. The motherboard is a Jetway motherboard. It's quite old. It uses DDR2. Obviously it's an AM2 slot, so it can only take AMD Athlons and AM2 processors. But it's got some really good features on it. So we've got a 24-pin power and an 8-pin, which is quite modern. We do have the IDE ports for hard drives and things, but it does also have 4 SATAs. It's got PCI and PCI Express, and it also has the motherboard notification LED, which are pretty cool. You don't really get them on any budget boards anymore. You have to go quite high end for that. It also has a number of other good features. So we've got the 4-pin for the CPU fan header, and it's got 2 headers for chassis fans, which again is not normal for budget boards, so I would suspect that in its day this board was actually quite a good one. On the back it features a number of ports, so it's got quite a good sound on it. It's got onboard video through either HDMI or VGA, which again is good. It's got a couple of PS2s, and it's got 4 USB 2s and an Ethernet. So this is the board that I'm going to use to build. It does run, it runs really well. Obviously it's not a gaming board, it's not modern, but we're going to see what it can do and see if we can get it looking really nice. To be able to build this, what I'm going to do is use the case that I purchased the other day and did a video on, which was the IONZ case. So I'm going to be mounting it into this case, and we're going to be doing a bit of a modification on it. We're going to make it look much better. So I think they called it a reverse sleeper PC, I think they call it. So it's going to look really nice and modern. It's going to be themed up to AMD. It's going to be a bit of a tribute, but it's going to actually house that motherboard in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a number of videos building up to the full build on this, instead of spending months sourcing parts and then just doing one big video, so that you can see some progress. So our first step with this project is going to be going around the case and doing any modifications that we need. Now the first modification I want to do to this is the front panel and the ports on the side are actually pretty suitable for the motherboard, but we do have a USB 3. So the USB 3 is not supported on that motherboard, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to be taking the panel out, the card, and removing the USB 3 and refitting a USB 2, so that way we'll have 2 working USB 2 ports on the front. Now I've set up my workstation, I've got my soldering iron, got everything I need to do some soldering. This is the card that actually came out of the case front. It's just a simple remove from here with the 2 screws, and it had the USB 3 sitting this side here, and another USB 2 here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually swap both ends, because what I found is the replacements that I have, which are these ones here, are actually white on the inside, and the one that was actually there before was black inside, and I want them to match. So I've removed them off the board, and I've removed a pin system here from the original USB 2. So I don't need the USB 3 cable anymore, that can be removed, and the old USB 2 cable can be removed. What I did also salvage out the same system as the motherboard was these USB 2 cables here. Now this would actually support 2 USB ports. So what I'm going to do is trim the wires off, solder them onto the card, solder the new USBs onto the card, and then eventually wrap with some braiding these cables so that they can be hidden in the case, and that should all work. So I'll get on with that now. So I've tacked the ends on and they're pretty stable now. All we need to do is solder up all the pins and put an additional piece of solder on the earthing legs so that it stays still. So I did manage to save one of the cards that I took one of the USBs off. These are simply USB PCBs that you can buy separately. I have a bunch of them, so that's how I managed to get the USB. And these ones are actually marked up, so you know where to actually put the wire in. So we've got VBus, which is your red wire, ground, which is your black, and then your D minus, your data minus, and your data plus. So we'll just solder them up now. Well, first thing we need to do is take the end off the cable. And start stripping the ends of the wires for soldering. So knowing which way the cables go, I'll take my little card, and that would usually sit that way round, so we can actually flip it over and we can work out what each one is. So ground is the most internal one, so we'll feed the ground wire through there. Solder that wire up. Then after ground we have the D plus, which is the green wire. And if we're following it round, you can actually see the traces, so it's pretty simple to work out on these kind of little boards. Still a bit fiddly though. Then the D minus is the next one, which will follow the trace round. Sometimes these can be a little bit fiddly, so what you want to do is use the tools that you have to be able to pinch things and hold them in place. And then the last one is the red one, which is the power. And now they're all soldered up. What I tend to do is just take any of the extra long tops off, just so it can sit inside the casing properly, make sure none of it is touching. And then afterwards Once I've done the other one, what I'll do is I'll pop some hot glue across these connections here so that it can't stop any pulling, which is what these normal white things would usually do, but I couldn't fit them on this board. And that's one's done. So we've now soldered it all up and both cables are on there fine. We've run a bit of hot glue across the terminals there so there's no strain on the wires if they ever get pulled, and we've mounted it into the case where it came out from before. The USBs are shown through the panel here, so they're now both USB 2, and that's how it will run from the motherboard. And they're matching colours as well. All we need to do now is insert a screw here, and that's all in. And then what we'll do later on is we'll braid up these cables with all the others when we actually do the modding to the rest of the case and cabling. So all we need to do is simply screw the top screw in. And the bottom one is a much wider screw, and it basically just holds the corner of the card down so it can't move. And that's our cabling done. If you'd like to see more videos on this project and get up-to-date information, make sure you subscribe to the channel and like this video.